The scary remains of fear. Here's your look at the new McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse Scarecrow. "20 years into the future, Gotham City is a dystopian landscape ruled by a mysterious new villain calling himself Omega. Among his lackeys is Scarecrow, aka Dr. Jonathan Crane. The former Gotham University professor turned supervillain has now become an even more twisted, nightmarish version of himself, riding on the back of Bane and brandishing long, fear-toxin-filled syringes as fingers. Scarecrow dispenses terror as he hunts down the Dark Knight." For Scarecrow here, he doesn't have the necessary means to stand on his own, simply just because he has nobody. I'm here all day. Instead, he actually has to rely on that display stand, but don't worry, it comes included with the figure. So I will have to include that when we get the total height for Scarecrow. So I'm going to take the tape measure to the very top of his head, and stop it right there. And according to the readout, Scarecrow, I'm here all day, Scarecrow stands 8.3 inches in height. We can switch that to centimeters, revealing that the figure is 21.2 centimeters tall. Speaking of no body, he actually comes with a body, and that is the body of Bane. The figure set of Bane actually only consists of 4 figures. The main torso piece, generally the first thing I look at when it comes to these review waves, the main torso piece comes with Scarecrow, and then of course you're going to have to add the arms, the legs, and the much needed head to finish yourself off Bane. For his size and just the torso alone, that's a pretty substantial looking Bane. I do like the fact that they did use for his tank top a softer plastic, but we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get all the rest of Bane put together. Of course, right now, he's just literally a severed stump, which is somewhat ironic again, the fact that Scarecrow has no legs. Anyways, we're going to move that to the side. Of course, the other thing that comes included with Scarecrow is a trading card, which we'll have a look at right now. The trading card depicts basically how Scarecrow is going to ride on top of Bane. You can see he'll use his extended fingers to stretch around the front torso of Bane, and that's basically how he holds himself in place. Until you actually get Bane put together, you really can't recreate this scene, so at least again, for the time being, at least they included a display stand. I really like that artwork though, and that's a pretty imposing looking Bane. I'm really excited to putting this together, but that's of course, there's the back of it right there as well. But that's the trading card that comes included with these. I always hold on to these. I like to put them into little trading card sheets to kind of keep them organized and keep them protected. So, of course, they're not going to get bent or warped. Of course, the other thing that comes included with Scarecrow is the one thing that's holding him upright, and that is the display stand. You'll probably recognize the display stand if you have been collecting DC Multiverse figures. It's the same one that came included with Superman. So, as you can see, there's a DC logo down below. A departure, of course, from the regular traditional black stands that we get with many of these figures. And there's also a little post there as well that you can attach the figure stand to. But you can go ahead and take the waist clip. The idea is, I'm just going to put Scarecrow down for a second, is that this is all just one solid piece of plastic. It's clear plastic, and you can't adjust this. However, you can adjust the waist clip. It is an awfully tight joint to open and close, as you can see right there. When you are putting it around Scarecrow's waist, there's not really a designated area to do it. You're basically just going to friction force it against, and it's just going to hold basically the sides of the figure. But it does the job well enough that at least if you are not looking to complete Bane and just simply want a Scarecrow for yourself, at least again, they included it. I would feel really robbed if the idea is to get Scarecrow, and obviously knowing that he has no lower half to him, if I had to build an entire Bane simply so then I could display Scarecrow on top of him, I think I would be rather disappointed. So I at least like the fact that McFarlane Toys thought outside the box or the packaging to at least give us the necessary means to hold Scarecrow upright. Even though it doesn't really make much sense that he would be levitating like this, but at least it's something. Let's go ahead and put the display stand to the side and pick up Scarecrow here. I mean, literally, again, like his whole lower half is completely gone. You can see what leaves behind on Scarecrow here. Again, there's very little of him remaining. It's a neat, nightmarish look and interpretation of what we're so used to seeing with Scarecrow. I mean, even though it doesn't really look like Scarecrow, it looks enough like Scarecrow with like the noose, for example, and like the long, raggedy jacket to really convey the idea of what Scarecrow used to be. Of course, when he had the rest of his body going. Now, what he does have sort of is a stretched across bag across his face. If you are curious as to what his head looks like, I do appreciate the fact that even though this is translucent plastic, that you could still be able to look inside and see those nightmarish peepers staring right back at you. But at least they gave you the necessary means. I'm going to go ahead and do this right now. You can actually remove the front half of his mask here. To do this, what you're basically going to do is just untab it. I don't know if I would do this too often, though, because as you can see, it's clear plastic that they're using. I hope those clips will stay well enough. The number of times, again, I'm probably not going to do it too often, but when you're lifting it forward, just know that the bottom half, you kind of have to lift up from underneath the noose. And there's that plastic piece right there. So we can move that to the side for the time being. You could also take the back half of it too. And with the back half goes also the additional, as you can see, the little life support cable. And that's basically just going to be something that's going to be dangling behind him. Once that is removed, you basically have just a regular Scarecrow face. Saying regular, I don't think does true service to actually how good this head sculpt is. You know, looking at this, even though it is of a DC variety, it very much looks like something we would have expected to get from McFarlane Toys years ago. Just a real neat looking zombie head sculpt. What I do like is the little strands that you can see attaching the top half of his mouth to the bottom half of his jaw. Just separate little pieces of plastic that show you that they did want to put a little bit of extra gnarliness in his face. I do think the tongue is really nicely sculpted, as well as those dark recessed areas of his eyes. Really, really nice the way that this turned out. He does also have hair there on the back of his head and a big noticeable hole there on the back. Again, most of the time you're probably going to be displaying him with the additional cover piece over top of it. I just like the fact that you can actually go in there and remove it if you want to. The noose is also something, I suppose, if you took the head off, because it's just sitting on a ball joint, you could take the noose off as well if you want to. But I don't see why you would want to even take this off. This is as much something I would expect to see with Scarecrow as everything else. Again, it's just a softer plastic, sculpted rather nicely, and you can see it's attached over top of his neck. This whole section here is all soft, rubbery plastic. I mean, I don't want to be stripping this guy down to literally next to nothing, but I suppose you could take the jacket off if you want to. It seems like it is a separate piece, and it doesn't look like, maybe just short of the fact the back of it may be tabbed into place, but I think that all the rest of it could probably be removed if you really wanted to. So for his head sculpt, maybe what I'll do for the time being is I'll keep the rest, I'll keep that plastic cover off, because eventually we're going to definitely have to get down to the posability on this guy. As for the rest of his body, though, as you can see, it's just ripped and there's very little of him left. What I like, though, kind of very similar to like Dream Warriors and Freddy Krueger with syringe fingers, Scarecrow takes that to the next level with, as you can see, really elongated fingers. Now, these are articulated in the sense that you can see there, they're all hinged together. Unfortunately, like the fingers are slightly warped, so I could probably heat that up a little bit, because when you're looking at them, they're just all over the place. Unless you really like the look of that, because obviously it kind of gives a little bit to the idea that there's just a mangled mess of Scarecrow, Dr. Jonathan Crane remaining. But I do like the actual syringes. You can see there on them. They're not made of translucent plastic, but they've done the next best thing. They've painted it in a really dark, rich blood red. The rest of the coloring of the fingers is all kept to like this very dark silver. I think the only thing I would probably say to add on to this figure is, while I think they did a great job on the head sculpt, the body I think feels a little unfinished. It is painted decently, but I probably would have gone in there and just added a darker wash just a little bit to this area. So like the ribs, for example, would stand out a little bit more than what they actually are right now. But really fantastic, stellar detailing here. All around, when you look at different aspects of Scarecrow, the torn nature of his outfit, for example, the little holes and rips that they have, for example, on the shoulders and on the back here, the torn, tattered-looking fabric at the bottom, and the little drapings of fabric draping down, all equate to a really decent-looking Scarecrow. Okay, so let's have a look at this guy's articulation. Now, again, I'm keeping the head off for the time being, well, not this head, but we'll keep the helmet off for the time being. I say helmet simply just because it's molded from plastic. But the head does move up and down, a good generous amount of posability working for this guy. Unfortunately, though, really to get access to all the things that we're talking about right now really involves you actually having to take that helmet piece off, then move and manipulate the head the way that you want it, and then go back and put the head halves together to cover over top of his face. He doesn't have really anything in the way of articulation here. It almost kind of looks like when you're looking at it right here, that it looks like he almost has an ab crunch, but it doesn't seem to be the case. It's just all molded plastic. It doesn't seem like it actually should rotate. I mean, after all, when you're looking at the back end of it, it's all molded plastic. There wouldn't even be give there if you could go in there and bend it, because there's just so much plastic, obviously, on the back end of things. So really, it's only kept to more so his head, and obviously to his arms as well. You can stretch his arms out. You can also bend the elbows out too, which is really not something I talked about, but to kind of give you a full idea from one end of the fingers to the other, just how far his reach actually goes is really impressive. Of course, you can bring the arms all the way around, back and forth. This is all softer plastic, obviously. You bend at the elbow, you can rotate that forearm. And then as for the hands, you can also rotate those all the way around. And they're also hinged. See the hinge right there? That allows the hands to go forward and back this way. And then he does also have the articulation on the fingers here. So these fingers, as you can see, move independently to one another. You can't move the thumb. The thumb is molded to the rest of the hand. You can see right there. But you can most definitely move the two independent fingers. These ones and these ones move separately, like that. You do the exact same thing on the other side as well. All in all, it's such a great looking Scarecrow. I almost feel like, in a way, it's disappointing the figure slightly by having the fact that you have to take the plastic halves and cover over top of his face. I mean, there's still enough of a visible face you can see underneath to see a rather frightening looking portrait of Scarecrow. But I appreciate, again, the fact that you can actually take those halves off to truly see what Dr. Jonathan Crane actually looks like underneath. Boy, would that have sucked if you had actually picked this figure out specifically because you wanted Scarecrow and not necessarily because you wanted to build yourself a Bane. I don't know why you wouldn't want to build this pretty cool looking Bane. But if you had just only been in the market to pick up the Scarecrow, man, would have stunk to open up this box only to discover that he didn't have a display stand and you literally needed the rest of Bane in order for him to actually be holding on to something. That not be the case here when this release of Scarecrow comes out, because after all, McFarlane Toys did pack along with this frightening portrayal of Scarecrow the rather efficient means of displaying him with this rather effective looking clear display stand that we've seen before with the release of their Superman, which does allow you the option then to display Scarecrow if you don't want to display him with the Bane. Based on the fact that this line is only consisting of 4 figures, means it's pretty easier to pick up this line and build a figure right off the bat. You don't have to be buying 6 to 8 figures, which sometimes be the case with these bath lines, where they have to have you pick up like 7 or 8 different figures with one little part of a figure. Maybe it's just one hand. Maybe it's one top thigh piece. You don't have to worry about doing that with Bane. I mean, I would have gone the route and gone the necessary means to pick up all the figures if it meant I could build myself a Bane, because I love Bane and I love the look of this Bane, but I'm happy to see that McFarlane Toys released this to a smaller figure release, only requiring us, the collectors, to pick up 4 of the figures to build yourself Bane. Now, of course, that's just talking about Bane. Talking a little bit about Scarecrow. What a frightening portrayal of Scarecrow from the comics. As it certainly goes for a figure, I think he has done some true frightening service to Dr. Jonathan Crane. Yes, he doesn't have a lower half. He can't stand on his own. But if you don't mind the fact that he's sort of levitating there like some sort of poltergeist, and I think it's rather effective, and it's a creepy looking Scarecrow. I love the fact he's got those longer fingers with the syringes on the end, very similar to what we would get for Freddy Krueger. And they did also put articulation in there as well. Nice touch, because they could have easily just sculpted those hands as staction pieces. But he did actually put articulation, not only in just the 4 fingers, but to the point where you can articulate the pairings of fingers next to one another, those neighboring fingers. You can actually move those independently from the fingers next to them. All in all, contribute to one devilishly looking cool Scarecrow. I'm really loving the look of this guy. Nice touch also the fact that they actually had the removable headpiece. So if you really did want to see how frightening he looked underneath all that, you can actually take the 2 halves of the plastic, separate them off like I did in this review, and you can actually see what he looks like underneath. It just gives you just enough of a sight to see what he looks like through that plastic. Slightly tinted red, but just enough that you can actually make out what his face looks like. But if you want the full frightening effect, just remove those halves. You can actually see what Dr. Jonathan Crane looks like from The Last Night on Earth. Have you picked up this line for yourself? Let me know down below in the comment section what you guys think of this Scarecrow, or based on this review and this review alone. Of course, as you could probably guess it, the fact that we're already looking at Scarecrow and how much I'm praising already this Bane, you can be rest assured to know that we are going to be having a look at the rest of the 3 figures that make up this particular line of DC Multiverse figures. And then in that, we're also going to be putting together this monstrosity Bane, which I'm super excited for. Lots of stuff coming your way, guys. But the key to that, and making sure that you're not going to be missing a beat on any of the new videos popping up on this channel, one thing you can certainly do for a service to yourself is make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. I know it seems like something I say on a regular basis, but you'd be surprised how many people watch a YouTube channel and then realize later that half the time they only search out the channel rather than actually subscribing to it. So if you are somebody that enjoys the content you're seeing on this channel and certainly want to stay on board and see more content coming your way, especially the rest of the Bane wave, then make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. Make sure you turn the bell notification on, and make sure you keep those frightening peepers peeled of yours, because of course we're going to be looking at a whole ton of new videos, including the rest of the DC Multiverse Bane wave. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.